Welcome back everyone, it is Eric from Rare Candy. Today we're going to be kicking off the first of many deck profiles for the upcoming Lost Origin set. And I think starting with Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR seems pretty appropriate. Definitely I think one of the most hyped new cards in the Lost Origin set, I think for pretty good reason too. So definitely wanted to check this thing out and see if it would, potentially live up to the hype here. But that being said, I think there's actually quite a few different ways you could take Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR. So at the end of this video, if you're still hungry for some more Zoroark content, I actually dropped a bonus article for patrons detailing some additional ways you can play this, an extra deck list, along with a bunch of extra card inclusions and tech options you can choose from. So if you guys want to learn about that and help support the channel in the process, I'll have a link down below in the description to that today. But with that being said, remember to leave a like on the video to help feed the YouTube algorithm. Let's jump in and check out this deck list. So up first, we do have 4 copies of Hisuian Zoroark V, and while it's not the heaviest hitting pre-evolution, the first attack is actually not too bad. For 0 energy, you do 30 damage, and you may switch to the bench. So if you do start with your Zoroark going second, and you want to get this guy out of the active and try to protect it, that's an easy way you can get some chip damage in, maybe set up a KO for the future, and get your Zoroark to safety. And the second attack can hit for 130, but more than likely with this particular list, we're probably never going to use that. But of course, we have 4 copies of Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR, the main attacker of the deck, and really kind of our only attacker. This is going all in on Zoroark for this particular list, and for good reason. It is a great new Pokemon VSTAR, 270 HP here, has this attack for 2 colorless energy, does 50 for each of your Pokemon in play that has any damage counters on them. So normally this would be kind of a clunky effect, but we have plenty of ways at manipulating our damage counters with this deck, and if all 6 of our Pokemon have damage counters, that's 300 damage, but more than likely it's going to be 280 since we have double turbo in the list. And guys, that's still great. That knocks out every Pokemon VSTAR in the format right now. And with the help of a couple of other damage modifiers in this list, we can even one-shot Pokemon VMAX as well. And even if that was the only thing printed on this card, it would be sick, but the VSTAR power on this thing is great as well. It's basically just research as an ability that you can activate. So in a given turn, you can play research, you can activate this ability, and you can even play cards like Crobat and Burrell to really just turbo through your deck. But that being said, we do need a full bench of Pokemon with damage counter, so we need some other Pokemon to round out this deck. So for a little bit of extra consistency, we are choosing to play a 2/2 Burrell line. Of course, for that Industrious Incisors ability, it's going to allow us to refill our hand to 5, and we are a very combo-oriented deck since we always are needing to manipulate damage counters and get damage counters on the field, so having a little bit of extra draw like this is definitely great. But the other key component of the deck is going to be the brand new Gengar, also coming out in Lost Origin. And Gengar, it's actually not a bad card. It can attack, but in this particular list, we're really not using it for the attack. We're really just using it for this ability here. If Gengar is in our discard pile, we can put it onto the bench and then also put 3 damage counters on Gengar in the process. So this is just going to be one of our main ways we can cheat damage counters into play to fuel this attack. You can even think of this ability as essentially saying, do an extra 50 damage every turn. And then from there, we have a handful of 1-ofs to round out the list. First up is going to be a copy of Diancie. So of course, Diancie has that ability. If it's our active Pokemon, your opponent can't target your bench basic Pokemon with their supporter cards, which is great because if we do want to use that first attack on Hisuian Zoroark V to do 30 and switch to the bench, we can switch into Diancie and make sure they can't take a 2-prize KO on their next turn. We also have a copy of Manaphy in the deck as well, just to protect our bench against sniping. We are basically always going to have a damaged bench at any given point in the game, which means sometimes Pokemon like Radiant Greninja and other snipers can pick off maybe damaged Burrells or damaged Gengars, whatever it might be, and get some easy prizes, which we definitely don't want to happen. And the last single prize Pokemon we're playing is going to be 1 copy of Radiant Hawlucha in the deck, because without Radiant Hawlucha, it can be kind of difficult to actually one-shot Pokemon VMAX. If your opponent is playing something like a Mew VMAX and they have an Oricorio, well, Choice Belt's not going to be quite enough to get you a one-shot. You are going to need Radiant Hawlucha to get over that hump, or if you're going against other Pokemon like Ice Rider or Shadow Rider, you do need that 30 damage for those sorts of matchups too. And the last Pokemon in the list is just going to be 1 copy of Crobat V for that Dark Acid ability to refill our hand up to 6. Getting into our supporter cards, we have 4 copies of Professor's Research, by far and away the best draw supporter we have in the format, so we definitely want to max that out. But we also do have 3 copies of Marnie in the deck as well, just for a little hand disruption. We also have 3 copies of Boss's Orders just to choose what we want to attack into, so a very straightforward supporter line so far. But the only sort of interesting inclusion we have is going to be 1 copy of Roseanne's Backup. So of course with Roseanne, this allows us to get a Pokemon, Special Energy, Pokemon Tool card, and or Stadium card and shuffle them all back into our deck. We play no copies of basic energy whatsoever in this deck, so in case we do prize and double turbos, or maybe have to discard them at different points unnecessarily, we want some sort of way to ensure that we can keep attacking throughout the game. And speaking of stadium cards, we have 4 copies of Gapejaw Bog, definitely by far and away the best stadium I think we can play in this deck, because whenever a player benches a Pokemon from their hand, that Pokemon takes 2 damage counters. So we want to max this out to ensure that we can find this card ASAP. That way every Pokemon we bench afterwards will start fueling our Zoroark's attacks. And not only does it help us, but if our opponent can't bump the stadium, sometimes this can be a math fixer against our opponent too. But the other key card in our whole damage manipulation strategy is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Damage Pump as well. So this is going to allow us to move up to 2 damage counters from one of our Pokemon to our other Pokemon in any way that we like. So this is great when we have something like Gengar that gets 3 damage counters on itself. We can move 2 of those, leaving 1 still in Gengar to do 50 damage, and then put those other 2 damage counters on 2 different Pokemon. So a lot of times whenever you play this card, it's going to be a plus 100 damage buff. Up next from there though, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball in the deck, of course just to find our basic Pokemon. You could, in theory, try to play something like Battle VIP Pass, but I don't think that's that great for a deck like this, just because we need to bench stuff from hand to activate our Gapejaw Bog. We're also playing 4 copies of Ultra Ball, of course, just to find our evolutions, and we can still get our basics, but at the cost of 1 more card to discard from our hand than Quick Ball. We have 3 copies of Evolution Incense in the deck as well, so just to search out our evolutions, but that's fine. We have plenty in the deck. We have, of course, Zoroark, we got Burrell, we got our Gengars, so no shortage of targets that we want to see with that. And we also have a copy of Ordinary Rod in the deck just for a little bit of Pokemon recovery. We are discarding a lot of cards at any given point. Like I said earlier, there are turns where we're going to research and use our V-Star power to discard a ton of cards in a single turn. And that's executing cards like Ultra Ball or Quick Ball as well. And sometimes there's even moments during games where I sometimes discard Pokemon if I don't have Gapejaw Bog down in play yet. So Ordinary Rod definitely helps offset some of these awkward situations we sometimes run into. Next up, we have 2 copies of Choice Belt in the deck just to increase our damage by 30 to Pokemon V. So as I mentioned, very important card against Pokemon V Max in particular, or even Pokemon V-Star that might have a big charm attached. And the only other Pokemon tool we're playing is just going to be 2 copies of Air Balloon in the deck as well, just to give our Pokemon 2 less retreat. But we have a couple of other switching options in the deck. We also have a copy of Switch, just of course to switch. And we also have a copy of Escape Rope in the deck as well, just to force our opponent to switch from time to time. So we do have a lot of switching options in this deck, but guys, we're only playing 4 energy in total. So instead of relying on energies to hard retreat, we are a little bit more reliant on item-based forms of doing that. And as I mentioned, we just have 4 copies of Double Turbo Energy to round out the list. So definitely not a lot of energy by any means, but if 3 Hisuian Zoroark get knocked out, we just lose anyways. So between the 4th copy of the energy and our copy of Roseanne's, I really don't think we're going to need a whole lot of help in that department. Now, there are some instances where I do think other energies in the deck could be good, and I do go over some of that in the article I mentioned as well, but right now, I'm just trying out this very streamlined approach to the deck. So that's going to be where I'm at right now with the Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR deck. And so far, the deck feels very, very powerful. It is a little bit combo oriented, needing the Gapejaw Bog, needing the Damage Pump, needing the Gengar. But between Crobat, Burrell, your Hisuian Zoroark's V-Star power, and your draw supporters, we do have a lot of ways to dig every single turn to ensure that we can keep those combos going. But with that being said, I want to hear from you guys down below in the comment section as well. What do you guys think about this deck today? Is there a different direction you think I should have taken this list? Are there other cards you think I should have included? Let me know your full thoughts down below. But if you guys did enjoy today's content, remember to leave a like on the video. And if you want to take that support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, where, like I said, you can get that bonus Zoroark article, or you can pick up some merch like the playmat you saw in this video over at rarecandytcg.com. Links to everything will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.